Thank you, Mariona, for this great introduction. That saves me 10 minutes in my talk. Today's talk is about, as you said it, inspiration. And inspiration has to do with the dream of space. And I like to start with asking you a question, the question that's right behind me. Are you living the dream that you dreamt as a child, as a student? Think about it for a moment. Is this living the dream? And I know many of us in the space industry, we work here because we always dreamt of doing bigger things beyond ourselves. So this is an important question that I always ask myself, but also my students and people I work with. Are you living your dream? And if the answer is yes, then great, then stay. If the answer is no, then maybe rethink your life. I've done that several times. I work in space now. Anyway, who am I? Mariona introduced me, but I like to introduce myself through a classic meme. And this was a meme that was popular many years ago, but I still use it. To indicate what it is that I really do. What the hell is a social media specialist for space? Which I like to think I am. And this is about perceptions. When you work in the space industry, often the first question is, in the corner, are you an astronaut? Well, no. I like to dress up as an astronaut sometimes, but no. Do you go to space launches all the time? Are you one of those space geeks who sits at Cape Canaveral all the time? Well, sometimes, but usually no. What I really do is what most of us, I think, do, and that's over there. I sit behind my desk, behind my computer, and I do my work. I work in the online world. I'm a social media specialist. I work on online marketing, so much of what I do is in my home office, in my little corner in my house, doing my work for clients all over the world. But I do get to do a lot of cool stuff as well. So, as Mariona said, I'm the founder and owner of SpaceSide. You see the entire company in front of you. It's smaller than you may think, but I'm the proud owner of a space company. And I'm actually very proud of that. If you want to learn more about what I do, there's a few logos of organizations that I represent, but please connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. My email is here. Google me. I'm easy to find. I work in social media. Space is a small world. Now, very few of you might know what this is, but this is Mariona and myself a few years ago in a place called Baikonur in Kazakhstan. Space is a small world. You meet the people, the same people, everywhere. Now, this is a place, and I'll tell you for those who don't know, in Baikonur City, a place where the Soyuz crews get their picture taken in traditional Kazakh costumes. And when you go there to watch a launch, you have the opportunity to do the same and do the same fake tea ceremony that the Russian and American and European astronaut crews undergo before going to space. So that's what this is. Google the crew pictures in Baikonur and you'll find many Soyuz crews in this same costume, sitting in the same position. But this is just to indicate how small this world is. Mariona did the first talk this morning, I do the second talk. We've known each other for years, and I've known several of you for a long time. Space is a very small world. We are a very small family. We live in a bubble. And that's one of the themes of this talk. We live in a bubble. Now let's talk about stories of space. Let's talk about inspiration, okay? We're living the dream here. And how did we get inspired to live this dream? And many of us in the space industry and beyond get inspired by science fiction, by the stories made by Hollywood, made by science fiction authors. We're inspired since the very first science fiction film, and before that there were science fiction stories. In fact, it started thousands of years ago, people wondering about what's beyond the stars and what is out there. I don't know if you know the very first science fiction film, Le Voyage dans la Lune, 1905, I believe. It's very short, you can find it on YouTube. Some people shooting a capsule through a gun into the eye of the moon and walking around the moon. That was the very first science fiction film. Frau im Mond, in the other corner, the first serious science fiction film, 1929, a German romance story taking place again on the moon, much inspired by Jules Verne. And when I was a kid, I read all the Jules Verne books. Underwater, in space, everywhere where these crazy stories went. I didn't realize these were written in the 19th century. That's what inspired me. And we'll see a few images from science fiction throughout my talk this morning, because science fiction inspired the space industry as much as the space industry inspired science fiction. Now, the early days of space, stories of the early days of space were about the right stuff. This is a film as well. This is the Mercury 7, the first American astronauts that were selected in the 1950s to go to space. The right stuff, test pilots, the best of the best men of the country going to this new frontier. This is how space started. And this is how these people were depicted. These were the heroes of the space race. This is a famous picture of these same Mercury 7 astronauts in front of a fighter jet. They were all test pilots. And these were the stories that America wanted to hear and to see in those days. And the stories of space in those days made headlines. The space race captivated the world, not just in the US. I put a Russian or Soviet paper here in as well. It really inspired the world with the stories of these first brave men, yes, they were all men in those days, going into space. And we celebrated the heroes of those stories. We celebrated them with ticker tape parades. This is the Apollo 11 crew in the famous ticker tape parade in New York, but also Yuri Gagarin. And I like this picture. It's a bit of a strange picture, and I'll point out why. This is Yuri Gagarin in a car, very similar to that, a little bit earlier, in Cuba. Look at that, people holding guns. I don't quite understand. But that's the way that we celebrated our heroes in those days. And you see the amount of people there. No social media, nothing, but the people came to celebrate these heroes. Now, we talked about science fiction. Science fiction played a very important role in inspiring the space industry. We see here, these are not astronauts. This is the cast of Star Trek, of the very first series of Star Trek in the 1960s, in front of the very first space shuttle. But we also see European astronauts, Samantha Cristoforetti, doing the... Star Trek fans know what this means. Live long and prosper. Science fiction inspires space. There's a big connect between the world of science fiction and the world of space, all related to inspiration. Now, many of you may know that the very first test vehicle of the shuttle program, the Enterprise, the first flight model that was used for atmospheric flight testing, was called Enterprise. And why was it called Enterprise? It was called Enterprise because of that, because of Star Trek. It was to honor the inspiration that NASA was given by Gene Roddenberry and the Star Trek crew. They named the very first spaceship Enterprise. So the spaceship Enterprise is real. You can visit it. I think it's in New York right now, the USS Intrepid Museum. You can still visit the Enterprise. Now let's think about it for a moment, why these stories captivated the world. Literally everyone, all around the world, were fascinated by the stories of space. Why was that? And you'll understand why I'm asking this in a minute. I'm not going to ask you now, it's a thought exercise, but think about why these stories appealed to so many people. And it has to do with this, with the theory of storytelling. And I'm going to give you a 5-minute free masterclass in storytelling. The theory, the principles of how storytelling works. Storytelling, for thousands of years, has been the way for humanity to pass the stories of our ancestors, of things that happened, significant things that happened from a religious point of view, from a cultural point of view, from a family story point of view. People tell each other stories. Before books were invented, before the printing press was invented, people told stories, one generation to another. Everywhere around the world, right from the beginning, we have stories 15,000 years old in caves in France, and there's many other examples of people capturing, telling stories to each other. Storytelling is one of the oldest forms of art, and an important one. Now, what makes a good story? What makes us remember and pass on stories? Well, this is a little bit of theory, and I apologize for a lot of text on this slide, but good stories have to be entertaining. They have to be believable, even though some stories in science fiction are unbelievable, but they're still believable. They have to be educational, they have to be relatable, memorable, trendy, relating to things that happen. And they have to be organized in a specific way. And I put that separate because that's an important one that I'll move on to. A good story follows a pattern that makes us relate to the story and makes us remember the story, to help you absorb the information, as it says here. Now, how does that work? Almost all stories, and this is a simplification, but almost all stories have a plot. They follow a particular plot. And the plot starts with an introduction of characters. Something happens, an incident. There's a crisis that needs to be overwon, ending up in a climax. And then the story kind of falls down again, and it ends with the hero winning, the hero being celebrated, the hero marrying the princess or the prince. But there's always this line of tension. And this is known as the hero's journey. Everyone studying communication will learn about the hero's story. This is the most classic way of telling a story. Okay? It starts with, as it says here, a call to adventure. The hero is called to solve an issue. Often there's a mentor that helps the hero prepare for his or her journey. There's this maze, this labyrinth of tests and enemies that need to be overwon. There's a final quest, a final ordeal, a dragon in this case that has to be slayed. And it ends with a reward, with winning, the road back, and the story starts again. Now, often in stories, in books, in films, you see multiple of these circles, these heroes' journey. But they have all these stories have a few things in common, and that is the characters, the key characters of a story. And nowhere is it as visible as in James Bond. I'm a big James Bond fan, okay? But in James Bond films, you have these three stereotypical characters that make up a story. You have the hero, the person that we can identify with, in this case, James Bond himself, and he has a mentor, Q, who provides gadgets, who provides the tools that the hero needs to win from the antagonist, the bad person, the opponent, if you like. And these are the three main characters. Now, often there are many more characters. There are allies and aides and supporters, but these are the three main characters of most stories that we know. Think about religious stories, think about other films, think about Harry Potter, The Lord of the Rings. It all follows the same concept. Because that's the way that we remember stories and that we engage with stories. There has to be a person we can identify with. And mind you, the good guy doesn't always have to end in the end of the story as the good guy. Sometimes the roles can swap halfway. The person we thought was the good guy becomes the bad guy. And anyway, there's many variations, but this is the heart of it. Now, if we look at stories of space, the hero is not always a person. So what if the hero is a robot? If the hero is a rover on Mars? Or if the hero is a probe going out to a comet deep in the galaxy, in the solar system? Well, the way we can relate these stories to our audience is by making them human. So one brilliant thing that the NASA social media team did with the Curiosity rover is they gave it a voice, literally. Now, of course, this robot doesn't have a voice, but on social media, if you go to X or to Instagram and you look up the account of NASA Curiosity, it will talk to you as if it is a person. It talks in the first person. I discovered a new rock today, whatever. It speaks as if it is a person. And this might sound childish or silly, but it worked. The NASA Curiosity account got millions of followers, just because the way it engaged with the audience. The same with Rosetta. The Rosetta probe going out to the 67P comet in 2014 and the landing attempt by the Philae lander. What the ESA social media team did was hire a cartoonist to turn it into a cartoon. And what the cartoonist did is took the box, Rosetta probe. I don't know if you've ever seen the engineering model. It sits in Darmstadt at ESA. It's literally a box. It's a little bit bigger than a washing machine, but it's quite a boring square box. Just paint eyes and a mouth on it, like they did here, and people start to relate to it. Again, it sounds childish and silly, but that's the way communication works. So let's go back to the story of the space race. Why did the story of the space race work so well? Well, it worked well because it followed the pattern. It followed the theory of storytelling. We had identifiable heroes. Depending on your point of view, whether you were living in the Soviet Union or in the US or whoever you would relate to, but our scientists, our engineers, and most of all, our astronauts, they represent us. They are the heroes in the story. We had antagonists. We had them. Again, depending on your point of view, the other side. If you were American, those were the Soviets. We had to beat them. If you were Soviet, they were the Americans. We had to beat them. And we had mentors. We had Q. Very few people realize, but Wernher von Braun and Sergei Korolev, they're really the Q of the space race, aren't they? They provided the gadgets. Now, we had a problem. We had to win a space race because the others were trying to beat us. And of course, there's only one winner in a race. We had crisis. The gadgets didn't always work, as we know. We have all these nice YouTube videos of exploding rockets in the 1950s and 1960s. It wasn't easy. We had solutions. The rockets became bigger and better. We had a resolution, because our hero was first in space. Gagarin did the first spacewalk. Leonov, even the first female in space. Valentina Tereshkova. Or the ultimate, the big prize, the first person on the moon. So our hero won part of or the entire space race. And we had the celebrations. We just saw the ticker tape parades. Our heroes, Gagarin, the Apollo 11 crew, they were paraded all around the world. Literally, they didn't have a life after they came back from their mission. But that's also the end of it. The story of space in the public perception ended in 1969, before I was born. That was the end of it. And that is the story that still sits in the public mind. Now, we know that a lot is happening in space today, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But for the people out there, this is where space ended. These are the last heroes of space. Everybody out there knows them. Half of Barcelona walks around in NASA t-shirts that they buy at H&M and at Zara and God knows where. You can buy them everywhere. But the people buy them because of this. These are the heroes of space. These are the last heroes of space. And no matter how much has happened since 1969, I mean, look at me, I'm an old man now, since 1969. I was born in 1970. These are the last heroes of space. And this is how I know that those are the last heroes of space. Does any of you know who these people are? This is the Apollo 12 crew. Even I have to admit, I should know, but I don't know the names from the top of my head. I know a few people here do, the real space geeks they do, but most people have no clue. True or false? Yet, there has never been a more exciting time in space than today. We all know that. But society doesn't. People out there have no clue about what's happening in our space bubble. Society has lost interest. we don't tell engaging stories anymore. And I don't know why. We tell stories, don't get me wrong, but they're not engaging. They don't reach the audience. And that has an effect. Again, sorry for the text, but it has an effect, because this is the perception of space in most people's eyes. Space is difficult, it's exclusive, it's for the Western world, space is NASA. Even I sometimes have to explain, the European Space Agency is sort of the European NASA. Oh, okay, now I understand. And then they forget again. Space is expensive, space is a rich people's toy. Space is wasteful. We hear more and more about that, about the environmental effects of space and how bad that is. It doesn't help us, it doesn't help anyone. And another one, and I'll get back to that, it's for STEM students only, so it's not for me. We all know that this is the truth. This is the perception we want to see. It's inspiring, it's for all humanity, it's neutral, it benefits all, it's for men and women, it's our future, it's everything that we want it to be. We have to work. We have to tell good stories in order for people to change their perception into that. Now, in 1959, this is how we depicted the heroes of the space race. You would think that we have moved on from that, don't you? 2021. Inspiration 4 mission. How inspirational is this? Nothing has changed. This, to me, despite all the good efforts and despite the fact that a lot has changed, the way this story was depicted has not changed. Here are 4 ordinary people wearing flight suits in front of a fighter jet, American flag. This is not inspirational, not to me. I'm sorry, despite the best efforts. I know a few of them personally. They're really good people, they had the best intentions. But these pictures don't help us. Neither do these. So this is my subtitle for this picture. It's a great picture, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's great because I can see where we are. No, not where we are right now. Well, maybe here just on the edge, but I can see where I live, where I used to live. It's great, I can relate to it. But in all honesty, people out in the street, this is a boring image of a satellite in low Earth orbit. And even this text is too difficult for people out there to understand. What an amazing picture. Yet, nobody out there cares. This is not a picture to engage the audience like we did in the space race. This is the reality of NewSpace, though. Space needs new heroes' journeys, new stories. And these are the heroes of NewSpace. The people like you and me. Students at a university building a CubeSat. That's an amazing story. Some of you might know these people. I took it from the internet, I don't know them. But these are the new heroes of NewSpace. They're right here in Barcelona. These people. They don't look like heroes, they don't wear flight suits, there's no fighter jet behind them, but these are the true new heroes of NewSpace. Some of you might know these people. Same here. I looked for local people. The key word in NewSpace, what we really need to talk about, and I'm glad we talk about it today, inspiration is one, opportunities. Opportunities to me is the key word of NewSpace. Opportunities for students. We saw it yesterday. Okay, I took this picture yesterday from the seat right there. Scholarships for the International Space University. Opportunities for students. We saw a perfect demonstration of the Cassini hackathon yesterday. One of the winning teams from the Cassini hackathon just a few weeks ago in Barcelona. Here on stage, right now where I'm standing, telling them how much they benefited from this hackathon and how they're now moving on with the Cassini mentoring program and pre-incubation and acceleration and all the programs that are available through the Cassini program. Amazing opportunities. We have opportunities for startups. This was just opened. Again, we had the head of the new ESA Big Barcelona, which I believe this is, here on stage yesterday, with the selection of the first startups right here in Barcelona. And these ESA business incubation centers are everywhere in Europe. Amazing opportunities. And we have amazing stories, opportunities for cool new companies. And I really wanted to highlight this because this, to me, is the coolest space story of 2023. And I know all of you know about this, but the people out there don't. And they did their best to tell the story in a nice way. They have an amazing video of the launch, and the video focuses on the people. But the excitement of the people in the mission control room when they successfully launched Mura 1 on the 8th of October 2023, one of those key new milestones in European space. Here's another cool story. Opportunities for new space countries. Mariona introduced it, and this is another key thing. New space countries. This is a satellite image of the Maldives. And the Maldives is one of those new space countries. And it's a new space country because of individuals, because of this guy. This guy last year, after going to the International Space University summer program, he got so inspired, thinking, there's nothing of space in my country, in the Maldives. So he started the Maldives Space Research Organization. He organized a conference, the SINC conference, Space for Island Nations conference last year, and it was a massive success. The government got interested, and now suddenly there's this whole movement because of one guy. Amazing. If you're looking for the coolest space conference next year, SINC 2024, the end of April. If you always needed an excuse to go to the Maldives, go there. And I'm actually serious, because the story of the Maldives in space, it's a small country, it's not a rich nation, but they are grasping the benefits of new space in Earth observation, in their position on the equator, etc. So have a look. There's the URL. You can register now. I don't get a commission. Storytelling. The future of space, according to Hollywood, is amazing. The future of space, according to the European Space Agency, is less inspiring. Which of these two images relate to you more? So we need to be better at storytelling. And of course I'm exaggerating. And of course we see amazing stuff coming from space agencies and space companies all around the world. But it's still not working. And this is a famous quote by some guy at NewSpace 23 in Barcelona, saying, Nichelle Nichols, that's her, as a Star Trek character, she did more for diversity in space sector than all space agencies combined. And that's probably true, because diversity is another important topic. We are exclusive, maybe seen as inaccessible, so we need to be more open. I'll try to finish this in 2 minutes. The biggest buzzword in space outreach right now is STEM. And again, I don't think we're getting it right. Space is much more than STEM. We saw examples yesterday of non-STEM people, like myself, working in space and playing an important role in space. There is a place in space for everyone. Now, we often talk about diversity, but these new role models of new space, they need to follow this diverse statement. So at the IAF, the International Astronautical Federation, we talk about the 3 Gs, gender, geography, generation. So we need to make sure that we include all these different groups. And I add E, education, because we focus too much on STEM. And sometimes we change STEM into STEAM, add a little A. Well, that works in the English language, especially in the US, where the A for the arts means everything else, whereas in the rest of the world, art means painting and sculptures. So I don't like to use the word STEAM. I like to use the entire alphabet. And I did my best to find roles that we need in the space industry. Some are a little far-fetched, for every letter in the alphabet, A through Z. We need all of them. And of course, STEM is an important part of that, but it's only 4 letters. We have 26 or 27 or 28, depending on your native language, but we need all letters of the alphabet in order for space to be a mature industry. We have companies like We Work in Space that specifically advertise vacancies for non-technical jobs in space. for this very same reason. Look them up. Be a role model. Because we heard it yesterday, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And the role models of NewSpace are right here in front of me. It's all of you here. Thank you very much.